we'll be discussing find average in the array. And so here we're starting out by clearing R10, and this is because R10 eventually in here we're setting R10 same value as R12, and down here we're gonna test to see if the value in R12 is 0 by this JZ is jump if 0, and so if it is 0, then we can just skip a bunch of code and go down here. But anyway, we'll talk about this clear W in a little bit. So starting off, this move.w, the first true instruction in this subroutine, we are moving R5 into R6. And so R5, right now, this is given to us that it's pointing into this average slot here, the first element in the array. And we are setting R6 to also point at this first spot, the average spot. And so this has been the same theme throughout the other teachings that we've learned through this professor. But the arrays, the way they're structured, and just by definition, the first element, we are just saying that it's going to be the average, and the second element, it is going to be the length of the array. And then here's where actually the elements all start. And so in the real world, once again, if let's say, it wouldn't really be like the nth element, that the length of the array is in this second element here. But for the sake of these learning purposes, we are always saying that the array first element is going to have the average, and then the second element has the length, and then you start with your values, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I just wanted to say that. It was super important because that took me a little bit to, try to understand. So, continuing on, incrementing R5, and so we are just moving on forward in the instructions, and so that's why we're using this R5 to keep track of everything moving forward. And here we go, move the value at the address of R5 post increment, move it into 11. Alrighty, so R5 now is pointing at this n, and we are going to set the value n into R11. So R11 now has the length total of the array. And down here, we're moving R11 into R12. And so this line of code could as easily just have been at R5, R12, here we go. Okay, so it could easily been this interchangeable. The professor just chose to put R11 into R12, but either way. So moving onwards. Now we are going to be testing R12, and R12 has this same n value in it. So R11 has the length of the array, and as well as R12. And here we're just testing, hey, if there are 0 elements in the array, then you don't need to do, this whole loop, all this stuff. You just need to skip to done, skip to the end. And JZ, once again, that stands for jump if 0. So if it's 0, we are going down here to our done. And before we talk about that, let's continue on into the loop. Here are our 2 loop elements. Looking at this first line, we are adding the value at the address R5 post increment into R10. So R5 is at this n value. Is it? R5 increment double R5 increment. Okay, R5 should be down here by now. Let's see. Yeah, so we have R5 is here. We're putting it into R6, incrementing R5, so it's at n, and then we are incrementing R5 once again, so it should be down here at this point. Okay, so I'm sorry about that. The value at the address R5, which is here, pointing at the first element of the array, and moving this into R10. So R10 is going to serve as our sum. This is going to collect all the values of the array, add them all up, and down here we're going to divide by that. So R10 serves as our sum. Down here, this loop is going to be repeated until R11 goes to 0. So R11, we had set it to be this n value here, the total length of the array. So we're going to repeat this loop R11 n amount of times. This JNZ stands for jump if not 0. So we're saying jump back into this loop and keep repeating this until R11 reaches 0. Moving down, then we have this function call. And call is used when we're writing a program and we have several subroutines. And so this is saying that we had already written another subroutine called divide somewhere else in the code, and we had written, basically just divide R10, by the sum, divide the value by n, because R12 is n still. So this call function, all this is saying is that, call this function divide, and apparently we had written this divide code somewhere else in the code and we're just calling it. And also, what's being assumed here, I think, don't quote me on this, but it looks to me like also in this divide code, we had said that that this total value is going to be set into R10, because R10 is our sum right here. And so we must have also said that this is going to equal R10, somehow move this value into R10, because down here, right, we move the value of R10, whatever that is, and we put it into R6. Why do we do that? Because R6 is our average slot. Our R5 no longer exists down here. R5 is, is all the way down here, and so our pointing spot is R6, and we are feeding our average from R10 back into this average spot, and that's how that gets there. I hope this was somewhat clear.